Critics got I Saw the TV Glow wrong. Now hold on, don't scroll off the video just yet. I absolutely love the movie. It's my favorite movie of the year. I know this movie is very well received. I know many people got so much out of the movie, but so many critics just got it wrong in the way that they analyzed and broke this movie down. It is a powerful horror film that taps into the existential dread of what if you don't make the choices to live your most authentic life that you can and rob yourself of that joy and deny yourself that existence. And I want to clarify, despite what this video is, I think the themes of this movie are absolutely universal regardless of the identities you hold, and I think there's multiple ways to interpret this movie as well as other pieces of art. It's very dangerous to interpret a movie or piece of art in one way. However, it feels really disingenuous to not mention that this film was made by queer and trans people who've talked about how their queerness and their transness has really affected the film. I think it makes it really easy to understand and interpret the film being about our main character, Owen, struggling with accepting that he is a transgender person, which I think really, if you miss that point, really shapes your interpretation of the film in a wildly different way, and I do want to talk about that later. And this overall denial of his identity creating a sense of gender dysphoria, that's why the film is so comfy in the last 2/3 of the movie. And like I said, all art is open to interpretation, whether I'm talking about movies, TV shows, books, paintings, whatever. And we can also reject the interpretation that's been presented by the filmmakers or the creators of this art, but in this case, many people are just wrong. Many people have viewed I Saw the TV Glow and seen it as a movie about just nostalgia. I can completely get that the movie is about TV shows and our love of them. I can get that connection, but you're wrong if that's how you view the movie. And more importantly, let's dive into why this disconnect is happening. But if you like this video so far, you like the format of this video, or you like video essays like this, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, send this to your grandma, start a chain email. This is my first YouTube video. Obviously, I'm trying to upload one of these videos every 2 to 3 weeks. I think you'll be very excited for what's coming next, but I do want to keep that a surprise. And I'm also sure this will be a much more calm and non-toxic place than some of the other places I've been on the internet. Thank you. And oh yes, I forgot to mention this. I'm doing an international 4K Criterion Collection giveaway corresponding to this video. I'm not sure if you can see this with this video or the ring light or whatever, but I'm giving away a copy of Perfect Days, Bound, Blue Velvet, and Farewell My Concubine. I'll give you some more details about that at the end, but I will ship this anywhere in the world, no matter the cost of shipping or tariffs or whatever fees. I'll get this to you. I may regret it later, but I'll deal with that later as well. And to paint a picture, I want to talk about the media that I watched growing up and the TV shows that I watched after school and how that shaped me. Before Toonami became an occurrence that you would see just on Saturday nights from 12 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. Hold on, is that right? That sounds absolutely ridiculous. How is that true? Has Toonami changed that much? Anyways, I grew up watching it every single day after school. But by far one of the most formative memories that I have watching Toonami is watching Dragon Ball. And obviously by Dragon Ball, I mean the OG Dragon Ball, I mean Dragon Ball Z. I did watch Dragon Ball GT, but we don't talk about that. I remember turning on the TV and seeing the Namek arc for the very first time. I saw these green skies, I saw these blue trees, I saw Goku wearing orange, I saw all of his friends and his son. I saw Gohan, I saw Krillin, I saw Piccolo, and all of a sudden the villain of this arc, Captain Ginyu, changes bodies with Goku, and everything in my mind just completely flipped. These were stakes I did not know were possible for a TV show. This completely altered my mind and changed what I thought was possible with television and what could be possible with a twist. Hell, I don't even know if I knew what a plot twist was before this very moment. And as soon as that happened, I found myself glued every single day after school watching Dragon Ball, seeing what would happen with this arc. Would Goku ever get back in his body? Eventually seeing the appearance of Super Saiyan for the very first time. And there's other moments of the show that really stick out to me too that were so formative as well. I remember when Trunks appeared for the very first time, and we see Frieza coming back to Earth after we think Goku is dead, and we think there's no way that our heroes can actually defeat him, and all of a sudden the Super Saiyan comes from the future and defeats him instantly after we see Goku and his friends have so much trouble fighting him over the course of the entire Namek arc. But none of these memories ever top when I saw the Cell games for the first time and saw Goku and Cell fighting for the first time as well, also seeing a warp Kamehameha, and then seeing Goku forfeit all of a sudden and just being left in complete shock when he says, "Gohan, it's your turn." I remember going to the supermarket with my mom after school and hearing just everybody talking about this when I went to the supermarket. I never felt anyone talk that way about a show before in my life, especially as we got to the final conclusion when Gohan finally beat Cell. And while Dragon Ball was absolutely important to me, I do really want to shout out Yu Yu Hakusho. I feel like that show really showed me how dark television could be. I don't know if it was really age appropriate for the time, but I did have older friends and I feel like it was okay because of that. I also grew up really loving Power Rangers, and I feel like watching Are You There in the Dark and also Goosebumps were really formative for my love and horror. Obviously, I'd seen much more intense things by the time, but it was cool to watch something every single week where there'd be a brand new monster of the week. That was absolutely terrifying to me as a small child. But I also want to know these were the television shows I was allowed to talk to my friends with at school and were widely accepted, and there's TV shows that I watched that I hid from people. See, because on that very same block of Toonami that I watch after school, not only did I get a chance to watch Dragon Ball Z, I also got the chance to watch Sailor Moon. I remember seeing these really powerful girls wearing these really beautiful outfits, fighting all these monsters every single week, and I thought, oh my god, that's so cool. It's so so cool to be strong and beautiful and powerful, and I want more of this. I also feel like I would feel a similar feeling when I would watch the Powerpuff Girls or watch Totally Spies or any other shows that were led by female characters that were also these action-packed, really cool shows. I just wondered whenever I went to school, why did people make fun of people, or especially boys, for watching these shows? But I never felt like it was something I could really talk about with my friends until we got much, much older, and we all admitted, oh my god, we were all watching Totally Spies, and we were all watching Sailor Moon, and we were all watching Powerpuff Girls. And honestly, thinking about that experience now, and thinking about my age, how many people my age didn't watch those shows, or weren't familiar with those shows? Because I feel like it was really hard to avoid those shows if you were just watching everything that was playing on Cartoon Network after school. And now that we've walked through some of my nostalgia and some of my experiences watching TV growing up, I think it's radically different to talk about my experiences watching Dragon Ball Z and spending time at a friend's house on a Friday night and having a sleepover and having pizza and soda and staying up until the sun comes up, because we spent so much time watching this television show and talking about it and debating about it and just, you know, kind of contemplating about it in the ways I think are really healthy for young people, rather than hiding in a basement watching my favorite television show or having VHS tapes inside of a closet of my favorite television show, or going to school and not talking about the thing that I'm spending the most time watching, which is completely Owen's experience with the Pink Opaque. I'm not sure if young people could relate to this experience or this idea, but there is a lot of queer-coded media that I grew up with that I feel like a lot of young people aren't getting now, because they're getting explicitly queer media. Or even the ways that the queerness is showing up is so much more explicit in their coding, such as something like the 4th season of Infinity Train, that I think it doesn't leave a lot to the imagination, whereas something like, I don't know, Charmed or Buffy, or just any kind of show where you could place yourself inside the shoes of the person that you're watching and see, oh my god, they're living the life that I want to live, that would instantly make something queer-coded for many, many people. I think that sometimes when people who are younger look at queer-code lists of media, they get very shocked to see what entries or TV shows or movies are on there. You can love a show, you can enjoy it, you can support it. Sure, you might have some spaces where it's not safe to talk about those things, whether it's at home or with friends at school, but there's online spaces. You can find community anywhere. I think that's kind of magical to be able to have that opportunity, especially when something is having such an impact on you. And even just talking about the media that I've talked about before, I can't imagine what it was like to be, I don't know, a gay man or even someone who was a trans woman in the 90s watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and thinking, oh my god, I see myself so much in this character, and not being able to know, who do I talk to about this? Who can I find that's my community, right? And now if you watch something like Infinity Train and you see something that's so queer-coded, and that's not just the only queer-coding in the show, you can go on Reddit, you can go on Twitter, you can go on TikTok. There are other spaces, and I think that's really magic. And I'm glad that people have that, and maybe that makes something like the idea of the Pink Opaque really only relate to people of my age or my generation. And obviously, the film resonates with many, many people love it, many people do get it. But at the same time, maybe that explains why some of these critics just completely missed the trans reading of the film. I feel like I Saw the TV Glow is a very unique movie because I think there's people who certainly get it, and there's people who certainly don't. I don't think it's necessarily that all cisgender people don't get the movie, because I have plenty of cis friends and they do understand what this movie is about, but there's other people who are glaringly ignoring the transness of the film, so I can't believe I'm doing this, and I have no idea what this will look like in the edit, so you're welcome editing, James. But I'm going to count every single instance that transness is mentioned or hinted at or implied in I Saw the TV Glow, compile it in a video right now, and tell you how many times it's actually mentioned, because it felt so blatantly obvious to me, yet for some people, they couldn't see it at all. One day later. So this is a much less dramatic transition than I was expecting. I just decided to edit on the couch, and it's a day later, so this is what you're getting. And now I want to name, I think this segment of the video might be very redundant to some people, but there's some people that still for some reason don't believe this is a trans movie. So I'm going to go through and highlight every single instance of this film, highlighting that it might be about transness or gender. So the first hint at transness or this film being about gender is when we see Owen blasted with pink light when he's watching a preview for the Pink Opaque. Now I do want to say pink has a deep meaning in this film, and so does the color blue. Whenever we see Owen bathed in pink light or he's wearing pink clothes, I think that's when he's getting the chance to live his most affirming life, or it's just when he's living his truth, right? It's a positive color in many connotations of the film. And whenever we see Owen wearing blue clothes or kind of bathed in a blue hue or associated with the color blue, things in the film take on a much darker, sadder, more ominous tone. To me, this is ultimately his resignation into manhood. After this, we see Owen spinning underneath a parachute in gym class. Just look at the colors here of pink, white, and blue. Again, these are all very obviously connected to the trans flag, and we see the trans flag colors all throughout the film. Next, it's important to talk about when Maddy and Owen meet each other at school. There's motifs of blue, white, and pink all throughout the entire school, but especially when these two are sitting down and talking to each other, there's very prominently white, blue, and pink. And then during this very same conversation, Maddy tells Owen that during election day, the school transforms into something else. I wonder if that is central to the theming of this film. And then when Owen goes over to Maddy's house to watch the Pink Opaque, Maddy and her friend are surrounded by pink, white, and blue light. As soon as the Pink Opaque starts, the room fills with pink light. Again, again associating the show with the affirmation and acceptance that Owen is looking for. Once the show ends, Maddy points out to her friend who's outside, and it says to Owen, you can go out there and join her if you want. I don't know, this one might be a bit of a reach to people, but I do think it still counts, and I do want to count everything that I come across in the film. We then get this transition from Owen to Isabel as we see these scenes fade slowly into another scene as we see these two characters kind of blend together. Obviously, later in the film, we get this verbal confirmation that Owen may be Isabel, but this is the first time where we actually see that association kind of paired, at least visually, in front of us as an audience. We then start getting the association of Owen and blue that's bad, such as when he starts talking to his mom about her cancer and he has the blue cotton candy, he spits into it, kind of letting it slowly dissolve. We then get an explicit reference when Owen talks about watching the Pink Opaque and his dad says it's a girl show. Now we finally have the scenes that take place in the extended walking scene in the hallway of the school. Now I do want to say there's a lot going on here, so let me break down at least the 4 references I noticed. All throughout the scene we see inspirational quotes that we'd often see inside of a school, but I do think these are a bit odder than some people give credit for. One of the ones that really sticks out to me is took the road less traveled by. I don't know, that kind of sticks out to me as a quote about transness, or kind of making these decisions that most people don't make. And then we get these little drawings that hint at what Maddy's been saying about the different episodes of the show, at least in her messages to Owen, and there's a reference to Isabel's magic dress, again the dress that Owen later wears later in the film. Another one of the quotes that really stuck out to me on the wall is, without courage all of their virtues are meaningless. I think there's a lot of ways to interpret this. I think it all has to do with transness. And something also really interesting to note about Owen's relationship with Maddy, they don't really talk to each other in school other than passing notes and passing glances, right? Essentially, as soon as he sees Maddy in this one scene, he walks into a hallway that has pink, white, and blue light, again the colors of the trans flag, and then he has access to the television tapes or the recordings of the Pink Opaque. We then get the scene where Owen is repeating Isabel's words in the television show pretty specifically, and I do want to say there's a couple of ways to read this, because obviously this is his favorite television show of all time, he might know how to quote it, but why is he only quoting Isabel? We then get the scene where Owen meets Maddy again, likely for the first time in 2 years, at least in person, and we see this pink, white, and blue motif again. I am not sure if we consider Maddy's tank top blue, but for the sake of the color scheme that we're associating with the rest of the film, I will count it as such. And this might be just me and other people can challenge this. I feel like this is the first scene where we see Owen notably practicing changing his voice. I feel like something very intentional happens right here. I feel like it's happening just right now with Maddy in a way that I feel like he's not able to be vulnerable with other people. There is a specific mentioning of Maddy talking about that she only likes girls, and there is a bit of disappointment when the camera pans over back or changes back to Owen, but when I look at the scene, it doesn't look like a straight boy longing after a lesbian. It feels like something else is going on here. Owen then directly references that someone has dug out his insides and he feels too nervous to look within, and he believes that something is wrong with him. This is probably the first direct reference to, I think, gender dysphoria all throughout the film. Obviously there's a lack of comfort that I feel from Owen most of the movie, but something really changes when we go from the young Owen to this Owen that's in high school. And then as a response, Maddy says that Owen is afraid of what's inside of him, and then hesitates when Owen asks her if she feels the same thing. Now, we talk about transness in this movie. A lot of times Owen is the focus of this, obviously because he's the main focus of the film. He's our main protagonist. But I feel like this journey with transness also happens with Maddy, both in her association with the Pink Opaque and also in the way that she appears later in the film, and I feel like I'll get into that later. And I want to point out again that we're seeing Owen wearing pink again, and I think for the first time during his teenage phase, or at least his phase in high school. I don't think we see him wear pink again all throughout the movie. And here we have another time jump where Owen is again wearing largely blue, and I feel like he feels a lot more repressed, a lot more resigned to the life that he's living in right now, and he has a lot less questions about what he's doing. Now, I think there's a pretty specific interpretation about Owen's dad and the way that he shows up in this film. He obviously represents kind of this form of toxic masculinity, or this path of masculinity that I feel like Owen and other people who don't have the opportunity to live out their fuller lives are kind of pushed down to conform into this male box, and I feel like Owen's dad does represent that. He largely exists as a foil for Owen whenever Owen wants to explore some bit of his gender or enjoy a quote-unquote girly thing like the Pink Opaque, and I feel like when he is bathed in the TV glow that we see right here, it's a lot more ominous when the TV glow is associated with something much more positive largely throughout the movie, especially the pink TV glow that we get from the Pink Opaque. Just want to point this out from the lyrics from Sloppy Jane. There's a part where she mentions, "I think I was born blue." I think we should really note that. We then get a scene where Maddy is looking at Owen wearing the pink dress. I feel like the way that she looks at him is so different than any other point in the film. This does not feel like a friend looking at another friend. This feels like someone who is lusting after someone else. And if Maddy, who is a lesbian who only likes women, is lusting after Owen, that means that she is seeing Owen for a woman, and that's the most affirmed that she is all throughout the movie. We then get another transition scene between Owen and Isabel. All of a sudden, when this really ominous music is playing, Owen is covered in blue light. And I feel like there's this really intense kind of allegorical nature to being buried alive and not being able to be who you are and live your full existence. And we see a lot of that with Isabel and Tara, and Owen is very afraid of that. We also get this moment during the kind of distorted cry scene that we see with Owen and Isabel, and it feels like their cries are running parallel to one another. They're not really happening on top of each other, but they feel very similar in the way that they play out on camera. I also think there's something really interesting about Owen's dad being the one to quote-unquote save him when he's trying to go inside the TV. It doesn't feel like he's actually saving him. It feels like Owen is crying for even more help than he had at any other point in the movie until the very end of the film. And then we get the monologue from Bridget Lundy Page, and side note, I just want to say their performance is just absolutely wonderful in every single way. It is powerful. It is heartbreaking in so many different ways. And anyways, there's this idea that's presented by Maddy as a character where she says that time is moving too fast and she feels like her life isn't normal and her life isn't supposed to feel this way, and she feels like a doll inside of a supermarket, which kind of describes to me maybe the sense of dissociation where she feels like she's being pulled outside of her body or feels like she is an observer inside of a body that just keeps moving. And then we get the scene where Maddy talks about changing her name, and again I feel like Maddy's transness needs to be mentioned more when talking about this movie. And notably right here we have Owen kind of responding to Maddy, and something that really sticks out to me in this scene is that the use of pink and blue feels very intentional. I feel like Owen being bathed in blue light says that he's kind of rejecting this choice of the pink light, which is kind of glowing all around him, as kind of this other choice that's really obvious, it's very present, and he's choosing to ignore it to pick the blue path. We then get another scene of Owen and Isabel just fading away in the dress. We then have the scene where Owen returns home after rejecting Maddy. I notice that he's bathed in blue light again, but this time when he looks at the TV glow where his dad was before on the couch, his dad is gone. We never see him again in this movie. His dad dies before we see him again. And I feel like by doing this, this allows Owen to take his place on the couch and again, conform to the life that his father's presented to him all throughout the movie. We then get a scene during this extended monologue that Owen gives at the end of the film where he talks about waiting for Maddy to bury him alive, and that never happens. We then have this scene where he's at the movie theater that I feel like is one of the most striking to me in the film. We see Owen cleaning up in the movie theater and he wonders, am I someone else? Am I someone else who is beautiful and powerful? And then there's a very conscious effort again to bring up the idea of being buried alive and suffocating to death. Then when you get these key words, there is still time, something that was hinted at the trailers in this movie, I feel like in the context of this film, it was so much more heartbreaking. We then have Owen reflecting on the passage of time like Maddy did earlier in the film, and I feel like when talking to queer and trans people, there's always kind of this feeling of time is just escaping them. There's not the choice because we live in a cis-het society. There's a very key passage here where he talks about being a man and therefore he's a productive member of society. And again, I feel like this is this resignation piece I was talking about before. Another one of the more heartbreaking scenes that we see in the film is he talks about having a family of his own and that he loves them, but when we look at him, it feels like there's a smile that just slowly fades away, and he loudly drags the TV into his home very slowly. Another return of the blue and pink motif is when he revisits the Pinko Pig again on streaming and realizes that it's not the show that he remembers. I have to mention the "You Are Dying Inside" on the money machine that's inside the arcade or kind of the pizza place, whatever, that Owen works at. We then obviously get the breakdown and scream that we get from Owen at the very end of the film where he talks about that he's dying and he's calling out for help. Again, something that has been kind of hinted at the entire film, and this is really his cathartic moment where he's just calling out to everybody, look what's going on with me, and he's just ignored. Everyone just freezes and no one says a single thing to him. And then we get the final piece of imagery, which I think is really key to the film, where we see Owen cutting himself open and seeing the glow of the TV, feeling a sense of safety that he hasn't had, at least in this final part of the film. And to me, that feels like he has finally gathered and accepted and recognized what the Pinko Pig gave him, and he can finally integrate that and put that inside of himself, and that he still has these choices, he still has time, he can still do the things that he needs to in order to live his most authentic life. And now that you've all gotten to witness the explicit transness of the film, I think it's important to talk about the very ending of the film and comparing it through the lens of transness versus nostalgia. And now let's interpret this specifically from the point where Maddy is returned, asking the question, is Maddy helping or harming Owen? And again, if the movie is nostalgic, why is Owen not reveling in his joy for the Pinko Pig? Why is he not proudly displaying his VHS tapes or wearing TV shirts of the show or having posters of the show plastered on his wall? So at first, Maddy appears in the grocery store, appearing out of nowhere after being missing for a number of years, and Owen is very glad to be able to see her. We then transition to Owen and Maddy talking in the bar, speaking about how the Pinko Pig is in fact real and they're in fact Isabel and Tara. And while not explicitly said at this point, we can gather that Owen is indeed Isabel and Maddy is indeed Tara. And side note, not the entire point of this video, but I think it's really interesting to watch I Saw the TV Glow and think about the parallels between this and the TV show that is the Pinko Pig and how it's presented in the show, because there's some really amazing parallels between what's happening between Isabel and Tara and also what happens between Maddy and Owen. After Owen and Maddy speak at the bar, Owen smashes his head inside the TV where we see his dad actually pull him out of said TV. And while I haven't said this specifically in this video, I do think nostalgia baiting and focusing on things solely from the lens of nostalgia, such as something like a Stranger Things or just kind of like a Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think that content or that media is really that fulfilling for me. Therefore, we interpret through the lens of solely nostalgia that Owen pulling his head out of the TV is in fact a good act. It's something that he should be doing despite, you know, the cries of pain that he has after this moment. We then go to the scene where Owen meets Maddy at the school. Maddy gives her big monologue, and after this huge monologue happens, Owen runs away, and that's supposedly it. Owen is supposedly happy after this point if this is about nostalgia. And I think that's the key to this point, because if Maddy is some kind of vessel for Owen's nostalgia surrounding the pink opaque, and this is solely about nostalgia, why is he so sad after she disappears? Why does the film keep going beyond that point and kind of, you know, I can understand his longing and his sadness for not seeing her again, but again, why does the film keep going on after this point? And so after this point, after Owen never sees Maddy again, he tries to watch the pink opaque on streaming, and he finds that it doesn't quite land the same way that it did before. Obviously, I think a lot of this is very applicable to the nostalgia reading of the film. Plenty of people watch things that they had nostalgia for before. If I watch Digimon again, it doesn't quite land the same way as I did when I was a child, or if I watch Power Rangers or so on, right? These things don't quite land the same, and I think that fits for this reading of the film. But at the same time, we hear Owen talk about what it means to raise a family in the same home that he did with his dad and his mom now that he has his own kids and has his own wife. And he just looks miserable the whole time. Obviously, you know, cisgender, heterosexual people can be miserable in their marriages and with their families, but there's something so grave and ominous about the look that he gives on camera. And if everything's rooted in nostalgia, why does Owen give out that one last gasp and call out for his mom at the very end of the film when he's working at the pizza place, the Chuck E. Cheese-like place, right? He's gotten rid of Maddy. He's gotten rid of this opportunity to be connected to the pink opaque in the way that she presented it to him. Why does that not bring him happiness by the end of the film if it's just about nostalgia? And finally, why does Owen see the television inside of him? What does that bring for him as a person, as a character inside of this film, right? Because if nostalgia is a bad thing, if going back to the pink opaque is a bad thing, why is he burying this thing deep inside of him? And then he apologizes to everyone that he let out that scream to at the birthday party, right? It just doesn't make any sense. You can get so much out of a television show, regardless if you're straight or you're queer, or whether it's the TV shows that you're loud and proud about loving, or the ones that you hide deep inside of yourself, right? The ones that are very private about. But Owen is not dying inside because he's not accepting or denying his relationship to nostalgia. He is dying because he's not accepting who he is and who he is as a person and what it means to live his most authentic life. And that would leave somebody to be miserable, right? Even if you're not transgender, right? If you recognize, oh, I took this job because my parents wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or wanted me to be, I don't know, a teacher, and you had no personal fulfillment over that job, you'd be miserable until you retired, or you'd be miserable until you die because you didn't make it till retirement because your life was just miserable. If you had someone that got away, like that one person that you really wish you could have another chance with, they're still looking out for you. That person that you got rid of in high school, go out to them, send a message on Facebook, abandon your family, go reach out to them. I don't care if they have kids. Everything will be fine if you reach out to them. Sorry. But there is something to be said if you don't live your most authentic life and don't make those decisions for yourself, right? I hate to harp on this point, but how do you come out of this film, rationalize what you've seen, view it through solely the lens of nostalgia, and make sense of that ending? Because nothing really makes sense about that ending at all. How do you come out of this movie wondering about your relationships to TV shows and what you loved as a child, and thinking about your relationships to friends who love those same TV shows, when Owen is screaming for help, hating his life, and pulling a TV out of his chest because he's trying to find something to live for? And that can all sound like a really wild exaggeration and really something that I'm just kind of complaining about at this point, but I saw so many professional critics speak about this, whether it's videos or reviews, and this is all they got out of the film. And you know, I can't control what people get out of a movie. I can't control how they interpret the film. I can't control if someone likes or dislikes a movie. Obviously, anybody can choose to like or dislike a movie, but this was so frustrating to see over and over and over again, and completely ignoring this person in pain. And for everyone out there who's still wondering if you can make a choice, if there's still time, there is always time. You can still always make a choice. You can still do this. You can find friends and family who love you and care for you and accept you for who you are. It's not worth living a life that you don't want to live, and there still is time. But wait, there's more. I hope you all get used to the voices I do. So anyways, let's talk about the International Criterion Collection giveaway that I'm doing that features only 4Ks right now. And there's also a way to do this and get multiple entries. So one, in the description of this video and also my link tree, you will see a Google form. All you need to do is fill that out. Now there's multiple ways to get multiple entries for this. One, you'll get one entry if you subscribe to my YouTube video. video. 2, you will get 5 entries if you provide some kind of feedback in the form about what you thought about the YouTube video. To me, feedback is the most important thing. I'd really love if people subscribed. I really wish people were, stay invested in what I create. But to me, feedback is so important. You will also get another entry if you follow me on TikTok, and I will give you another 2 entries if you comment on this video. Again, the 4Ks I'm giving away are Perfect Days, Bound, Blue Velvet, and Farewell My Concubine. I will ship these to any place in the world, I guarantee that. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video.